At Affinity Plus, our members come first.
Affinity Plus helped me a lot to pass through this tough time.
My family was negatively affected.
Affinity Plus showed that they are invested in our success.
You are the top priority.
And they did it proactively.
I have found them to be respectful, supportive, and compassionate.
I don't feel judged.
I feel when I go, I'm in safe hands.
And that is why I bank with
Affinity Plus.
Hi, everybody. Welcome again to Gopher Review and Preview. Thanks to Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union. I'm Justin Gard from The Fan. And for a second straight week, we are reviewing, well, we're previewing nothing, and we're reviewing nothing at the moment because the Gopher football program continues to be on pause because of COVID-19, a little mini outbreak here that they've been dealing with the last 10 days or so. But we do have some news that kind of popped today on if and when they will come back against Nebraska. So we're going to talk about that on the show tonight. Want to give a big thanks to Affinity Plus for helping us out on this new endeavor all year long. They've been great supporters of Golden Gopher Athletics as well as us here at iHeartMedia for a long time, and we appreciate their support on this show that sounds like it's going to continue for a while, certainly through whatever football season we have left. So with everything changing right now, everything kind of being shut down again, video banking huge, affinityplus.org to learn more about that. Their mobile apps top rated, affinityplus.org to learn about that. A lot of advantages to becoming a member at Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, so make sure you check out affinityplus.org for everything there. My guest today to talk about the COVID outbreak, the season so far, and a little Gopher basketball is the voice of the Gophers, Mike Grimm, in his home studio where he's been since mid-March. How are you, Grimmer?
I haven't opened the door. I've been stuck here. They slide a little glass of water and a piece of bread in every few hours. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen you in person like I usually do. I've seen you a couple of times this year. I think on one home game, I might have seen you for like 3 minutes because we're in completely different spots at TCF Bank Stadium. But I know you've had basketball to deal with, and I want to talk about that a little bit later. But what's it been like to just be on the sidelines here the last couple of Saturdays?
Well, it's actually, I was thinking about this. It's 4 straight Saturdays now, right, that we haven't had anything to do because we had 2 Friday night games in a row and then 2 cancellations here in a row. So it's been okay. Unfortunately, with what's going on with shutdowns and sickness and illness and nothing open, it's not like, hey, let's go to Buffalo Wild Wings and watch some games. You know, you're stuck at home and all by yourself. So it isn't like you can take advantage of having a Saturday off, per se, like you normally would be able to, or, hey, let's jump into the car and head someplace for the weekend. It's, here we are and stuck.
So it's 2-3. The Gophers are 2-3 because they didn't play Wisconsin, not going to play Northwestern this week, hopefully going to play Nebraska. Things are trending that way, it looks like. So what are your kind of top level thoughts on what we have seen so far this season, Grimmer, with 2-3, totally weird year, guys out with COVID, guys out with injuries, players on other teams, same deal. I mean, is it fair to do grand conclusions on a season like this? Do you have any grand conclusions so far in a season like this? What do you make of the first 5?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can. I mean, they're playing the game, so you have to judge what you see. Is it bizarre? Do we know there'd be uncertainty? Do we know there'd be unknowns? Of course, and everyone's dealing with that. So it's that's kind of an equal thing across the board. Now, some people are hit harder by it than others. In relation to the Gopher team, I think it's probably magnified a little bit the inexperience on defense. I thought the Gopher defense, we knew they had holes to fill. I think what we're seeing is just how good Antoine Winfield Jr. and what an impact he had in making plays and making difference. And when you don't have that, it changes things. And they really struggled for those first handful of games. I actually, in the Purdue game, thought they played better, even though they only forced 2 punts. They did force a couple of field goals. And Purdue didn't challenge them against their weakness, I guess, which tip of the cap to them for not watching film that week, apparently. But it is what it is. So now you've got a couple of weeks off. Hopefully you get some bodies back, and hopefully you can continue to progress. And PJ Flex talked about it. Playing's better than not, and I think the last 2 weeks has shown that, this coming week and last weekend.
Well, and I've told people, because people would say, especially when they, lost to Iowa big, or even when they lost to Maryland out there, and people would say, God, is it weird? Is it like hard to watch that? Like when they're playing poorly, even the Michigan game, when that was pretty much non-competitive after the second quarter on, And truthfully, I said, not really. Like we've been in some bad losses over the years, right? Where it's, I think about the 2011, our first year when they go to Michigan and they're down 21-0 in the first quarter, and it's just 3 possessions and they're down 21-0. It's just over. And you're sitting there and going, man, this is gonna be a long afternoon. I'm gonna be here for a long time. I think because there's no fans there, like I don't feel the energy of a loss, and I don't feel the energy of a win either. Friday night, a couple Fridays ago, really fun game against Purdue, right? I mean, a lot of crazy things going on. You had the near interception, then the near reception, then the turnover back where they've got to move it back, the pass interference call that wasn't, the interception that was. Like, even that, like, okay, they won. That's exciting, but like, I don't have the same like adrenaline, I guess. How do you feel up in the booth, further away from where I am?
Yeah, I've been asked that before because in the middle of games I'll get texts from people who are listening and they'll say, "Man, it sounds like you're at a high school game," and I'm like, "Well, the high school game I was at, last year had more people than this one has."
Yeah.
So that might make sense. That sounds like it. We're trying all we can do with the fake audio and the parabolic mics to get sideline audio. That said, once the game starts, I'm going to sound like Tanner Morgan a little bit here, and he talked about it as well. Once the game starts, you're doing your job. Like Tanner Morgan has to find out who his open receiver is. He has to read what the safety and linebacker are doing. Is he going to give it to Muhammad Ibrahim, or is he going to pull and throw over the middle to his wide receiver Rashad Bateman? And once that starts, you kind of block everything out. And I guess I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I follow the ball. I tell people the best of my ability what is going on. And honestly, I haven't noticed that there's not been fans in the middle of the broadcast. We've probably, where I would have noticed it if they were there, where I would have let the crowd talk or breathe or, let's do this. But since it's not there, I haven't noticed it because I'm still describing what's going on. And there's still sound in my earphones. And I've noticed it, especially in basketball, because they have that dull din that they play over the loudspeakers.
Yep.
And I'll take my headphones off just, during a commercial break or something to catch my breath. And I'm like, man, this place is, the barn is, there's nobody here. And they're not allowing anybody there. Like
right.
There's 50 people in the whole place. Parents can't come, family can't come, academic people can't come. I mean, you're either a player, you're a coach, you're a managerial staff, game management, or a media, and they're even limiting, many of those folks in those seats. So, so once the game goes, I'm a little like Tanner. I don't notice it because we have a job to do. Now, if I'm you, and most of the game I just get to sit there and watch, you probably notice it.
Yeah, I notice everything.
Yeah,
I notice that you're right. I'm affected by it. I need the crowd and the adrenaline, and I don't have that. But I'm not really working. I'm just hanging out. I'm just trying to stay warm.
And I'll tell you the other thing that will be a real test is once the road games start in basketball, because we're all the Big Ten except for 1 or 2 is not going to travel. We're going to do what baseball did and do games off of monitors and stat sheets and
like the Vikings radio network,
like the Vikings
PA and
right
those
now.
guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, a little bit in football, we've been fortunate that we've been given the resources to travel on our own, and now that means loading in a van and driving 8 hours, so it's not exactly luxurious when we go, but we love our job enough to want to be on site. Basketball, that won't be the case. So December 15th will be the first time Spencer and I will have that test to sit in a room and stare at a projection TV and a stats monitor and have fake audio into our ear and call a game off of a TV screen. And I think, I've heard PA, I've heard Corey Provis and Dan Glad and those guys, and they do a good job. So
yeah.
I'm hoping that we can do a similarly decent enough job. But I think in relation to your question, what will that be like, or have you noticed? I'll bet I'll notice when I'm sitting in the indoor club room at TCF Bank Stadium watching the projector TV of a Minnesota-Illinois game that things are a little different.
If you're just joining us right here on the stream, this is Gopher Review Preview thanks to Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union. I'm Justin Gard. I'm joined today by the voice of the Gophers, Mike Grimm. If you've been with us all season long, you know that we typically review the game that just happened and preview what's coming up. A little weird here the last couple of weeks. And this week in particular, we're reviewing nothing and previewing nothing because there was no game this past Saturday, and there won't be one this coming Saturday, the 5th, against Northwestern. We do hope to preview Nebraska next week. More on that in a minute. But, Grimmer, while I have you, it was a week ago during this show that Rashad Bateman announced that he was going to opt back out again. given the uncertainty of when they were going to play again. I think it makes sense for him to just go, all right, see ya, had a good run. I'm glad I came back, but it's time to do other things. I guess we can review the career of Rashad Bateman from your spot. How will we remember him in the Golden Gopher uniform?
Well, certainly, I think right in our time, him and Tyler Johnson are 1 and 1A in terms of the great receivers. Eric Decker, I was part of the Gopher Radio Network, not calling the games, but part of the network when he was putting up his big numbers as well. So, those are the three guys that stand out over the years. Drew Wolotarski was a regular contributor. KJ May, who went from running back to receiver and had 70 catches one season, and they kind of turned him into a receiver. But clearly Bateman, I think even Tyler Johnson would probably admit that Bateman, just in pure skill, is probably the best of all of those guys we've talked about. I think Johnson had a special knack for big plays, a special knack for being the right guy on third down. I still am baffled when the scout said that he was not athletic. Watching him play high school basketball, jumping over guys to dunk, and I watch him make some of the, he won a pie for it.
He won a pie for it. There's no question.
A non-athlete's not going to do that. But in terms of Bateman, so first I don't blame him. I think he's taken a little criticism from people, and he's probably opened himself up for that, for opting out and then coming back and now opting out again. But there becomes that balance of risk reward, right? Where if the Gophers hadn't had games canceled and they were sitting here tied with Northwestern 5-1, and they were playing this game against Northwestern this weekend, the risk reward balance factors into where Bateman's probably still playing.
Yeah.
But they're out of the mix. And I've used this analogy a lot over the course of the years for other athletes as well, including Daniel Oturu when he went early. You look at Rashad Bateman, he's holding on to a winning Powerball ticket. Okay. He's got a ticket that's probably, if he does not get hurt from this point forward, and he trains to lay down a 4.34 40-yard dash at the combine, I don't know, what does even a second round pick sign for?
You want me to look? I'll take a look. While you talk, I'll look for it.
It's millions of dollars. And so the question is, what's the risk based on what's the potential reward? And what's the reward now for sticking around? Yes, you can stick around and finish it with your teammates. I think they would understand and do understand as well. And basically what you're doing is you've got that winning Powerball ticket, and the longer it goes in terms of what your risk is with less reward, the closer it gets to that flame of potentially catching fire and disintegrating before your eyes. One bad shoulder situation, one Teddy Bridgewater injury, one broken ankle, and all of a sudden that power. And look, he probably has an insurance policy, but it's certainly not going to be what a first or second round draft pick is. So I don't blame him. I would say this, if he were my own, and I'm usually, this, Guardsy, I'm usually all about the team. I'm all about sacrifice. I'm all about, do for the greater good. I think in this specific case, though, if you're Rashad Bateman, I have no qualms with him stepping aside given the current situation. Plus, his initial concern was the virus, and the virus is poked up again. We're missing 2 games here. And so he has that to look at too. So that just is a backdrop to it. But he's going to be one of the all-time greats. He basically played 2 seasons and a handful of games, right? And that's it. And he's going to be amongst the top 3 or 4 in every single receiving category there is. And in specific years, he's the all-time leader in just about every category as a freshman. He's the all-time leader in just about every category as a sophomore. And clearly, had he been a 4-year player, he would have held all the records. So it was a pleasure to watch. And it also changed kind of the trajectory, I think, of the program and the offense. You add that weapon to the rest of them, and it was a thrill to watch. There's no doubt.
Well, I'll always remember that Purdue game in 2019 as kind of the coming out game, right? Because they had struggled through the non-conference season. They needed Antoine Winfield against Fresno. They needed Chris Ottman-Bell against Fresno. They needed 3rd and 30 against Georgia Southern, right? South Dakota State, if they don't fumble, the Gophers probably lose to South Dakota State in that first game of the year, right? And then the Purdue game, all of a sudden, it was like that was Tanner's 21-22 or whatever it was. And Ottman-Bell, I think, got him started, but Rashad had a deep touchdown late in that game. That's where the passing game just completely took off, and it was because they had all of those guys, and Bateman was such a big part of that. We've never seen – that's why I told people last year, like mid-October, late October, and probably about mid-October, I'm like, we're not going to see this very often, where there's 3 guys like, 2 guys like this, and then Chris Ottman-Bell, obviously very capable 3rd wide receiver. He's good. where this just isn't going to happen. Even if PJ stays here for 50 years and recruits more wide receivers like he typically does, I don't know if we'll ever see in our lives, Grimmer, what we saw with those two guys and Bateman just exploding last year.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember at signing day, PJ Fleck talked about how good Bateman was going to be. And we've all heard coaches talk about recruits. You and I occasionally even might roll our eyes at looking back at what coaches, not the current coach even. I'm talking about previous coaches. I've never seen coaches fall in love with guys and fall out of love with guys as fast as some of the coaches we've been able to cover. And I'm sure it's true with all of our counterparts around the league. And it is what it is. You see a guy, and then all of a sudden you get him on campus and things can change. You and I were standing on the sideline of the first practice we were allowed to watch Bateman's freshman year in the fall. And as we walk in, they're working on red zone stuff. It might have been even spring ball. Was he early enrollee? I can't remember now, but it was at the indoor. Yeah. And we had not seen him. And you and I walked in, and they're running red zone stuff. And I believe it was Annexted was running the quarterback, and he threw it was just kind of a cross across the back of the end zone. The throw was a little high and a little behind him, and Bateman at full speed jumps, kind of pirouettes in the air, snags it, gets both feet in, turns, kind of hands the ball to the student manager like it was nothing.
Yeah.
And this was 3 minutes into the first practice that we had seen. And we both looked at each other and were like, yeah, PJ's right. This guy is going to be good. Like we haven't seen a guy make that catch ever here.
No.
Like, God love Tyler Johnson. God love Eric Decker. God love Drew Wolotarski. A receiver hadn't made, and it was just effortless. Like it was nothing. And now having said that, Tyler Johnson elevated his game to make contested catches probably as well as anyone.
Absolutely.
Seen,
Yeah.
But Bateman, just the way he could separate, the way he could jump, the way he'd catch on the run, the way he could shift and change direction, absolute great skill set, and skill set why, he's going to be a first or second round pick probably.
2019, Grimmer, average guaranteed dollars by round for draft pick. A first rounder, the average guaranteed dollars is 17 million, basically. And obviously that's, the top picks are going to make more than that. But on average, if you're a second round pick, your guaranteed money is 3.7 mil.
So it's a lottery ticket. Basically it's a lottery ticket. So are you going to, at this point, is that worth risking? Like I said, if they're 5-1 and tied with Northwestern and have the Wildcats this week, and there's been no COVID situation, there's no chance he's opting out, right?
Right.
And some people might consider that a flaw. I don't. I think you have to be smart at some point and let the, valor or whatever they.
Well, and he knew. I mean, he knew probably like everybody down there that, well, we're not playing for a couple of weeks. Am I coming back to go play, in Lincoln and then maybe one other game? What's the point?
Against Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
I'm fine with it. Yeah, I thought it was cool that he came back. I thought it was fun to watch him play. It's too bad that he's not going to have kind of that send off, that you would like to associate with a player of his caliber. The final home game, waving at people. Senior day was always unrealistic with him, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That final homage to him, and he'll be back. I mean, he's mentioned it. He wants to live here when it's all said and done. So won't be the last we've seen of him. Before we talk a couple of minutes of hoops, Grimmer, Nebraska on the 12th, percentage chance they play, in your opinion, given what we know as we are doing this show now?
I think it's over 50-50. I think, some of these guys, the numbers have trailed off, it sounds like, in terms of positive testing. That's what we're told. And then I think the other thing is, obviously, you're going to see a lot of guys now starting to trickle back into the rotation that have been out for those 21 days. Because it wasn't like 21 guys on the same day 2 weeks ago tested positive, and now you have to wait for all of them. I mean, a couple of these guys now would have been back for this weekend, so certainly they would be back for next. So I think it's like I've seen people just assuming that the Gophers are going to cancel the season. I don't think that's the case at all. I think they want to play. I think they've always wanted to play, but I think right now it was trying to stop the immediate spread to make sure that there was some semblance of a season left. So I think it's better than 50-50. What do you think?
I'm with you there. I don't know what the right percentage would be, but I will say, and we'll give a little nugget on this show, if you didn't hear it on the radio earlier today, that PJ Fleck on his TV show on Wednesday mentioned that Wednesday the kids were back, not at practice, not in the building, but they were allowed to basically break off into groups and do some kind of conditioning session whatever that's called. So there, he talked on our radio show, Grimmer, about there's a couple of different phases that they have to go through before they can actually play. I guess one of them is conditioning. I don't know. I don't have the blueprint for it, but the fact that they were at least allowed to go back, get their stuff, and then go work out outside somewhere in some type of small group, baby step to moving forward to hopefully playing against Nebraska.
Yeah, if you can get a couple of those kind of days in, and I'm assuming I asked yesterday and really didn't get the answer if they're allowed, and during a pause, if they're allowed to do virtual stuff. Like, is Tanner Morgan allowed to talk to Mike Sanford during a team pause? I don't know.
I'm sure he probably is.
I'm assuming they're going through virtual stuff now, which they're implementing. I would guess at this point, Nebraska game plans every day here to get ready. So that part of it, they're probably a little ahead of what they'd normally be, because they'd be getting ready for Northwestern right now. So once the physically you can show up and practice, I think then it's full steam ahead, assuming again that everything else stays in line.
All right, in our final couple of minutes, Grimmer, the Gopher basketball team has played 3 games, men's basketball. Women's basketball opened the season earlier this afternoon. You've been there for all 3 of them, a win against Green Bay and 2 against Loyola Marymount. They've got North Dakota at the barn Friday night, 8 o'clock. What do we know about this Gopher basketball team through 3 games? What have your observations been? A lot of new faces.
Yeah, a lot of new faces, and I don't think I'm probably going to shed any great new light that diehards don't already, know, in the sense that the depth is better. They can withstand foul trouble better. They're longer and taller. They're probably a little faster. They've still at times struggled shooting from the outside, which has to get better. Marcus Carr, it looks like, has elevated his game to a point where, that's a guy that can win games for you in the Big Ten, which is nice. It's nice to have, and Coffee toward the end, his last 11 or 12 games was this way, where you could, if you needed a bucket, you had a go-to guy. And for a while, that wasn't always the case. And that's not a bad thing sometimes. Sometimes it's better not to have that, because now you don't know who to guard, right? If you have 5 guys that are all good. But there does come a time where if you're in the Big Ten especially and you need buckets late, you need a guy. And so it looks like Carr's that guy. So I think that part's exciting. And I think we're also seeing a little bit, Justin, that we talk about football. And this is, again, I'm not making an excuse for the Gophers, because everyone had to deal with this. But we're seeing the importance of having a couple of non-conference games. Like they played great in the first half against Green Bay. Then there was a stretch of 6 minutes where it wasn't very good. And it's nice to be able to get tested and then still win the game. Like if that's Michigan State and you just get thrown right to the Wolves, you probably lose by 15 points. And now your confidence is shot. And so would have been nice for Minnesota to start with Florida Atlantic in football. I mean, I think we're seeing that. Loyola Marymount, by the way, I think is going to be a pretty decent team. I mean, that West Coast Conference is clearly going to be won by Gonzaga, but BYU's pretty good, although it looks like they got smoked by USC the other night. So I think Loyola could be in that second, third, fourth, fifth kind of spot in the West Coast Conference. And again, in these weird net rankings, the Gophers look to be fairly efficient, and those can be 2 nice wins as it gets closer to where you need to be. So, and I also thought this: they were in the first game on Saturday. They're tested early. They're down 19-10. They have to answer the bell. There's no fans, and they did. They were up at halftime.
And Marcus Carr went off.
And Marcus Carr just said, "Boom, here we go."
Yeah.
And then they jumped out. I think they stretched it. They controlled the second half really from the start. Stretches of like 21. And then Loyola Marymount hit a couple of threes and cut it to 10 with 2 minutes left. And there were times last year. I mean, the game wasn't really in doubt, but you never know. And there were times last year late in games where this team would melt down. So you're worried. Well, Gotch just steps up and drains a 3, and that silenced everything. That was it. Game over. Sorry. And then on Monday night, they, it was nice because it was a good meat grinding game the whole way through, and they had to grind it out. And then they again had to close, and Marcus Carr stepped up and was Mr. Big Shot with the big shot.
All right, man. Well, hopefully I see you in Lincoln, Nebraska at some point. Plexiglass between us. I don't know.
Yeah.
Masks worn. I know we'll be doing that. But hopefully we see each other in person a week from Saturday in Lincoln, Nebraska. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Thank you.
He is the voice of the Gophers. We'll say bye to him quickly. His name is Mike Grimm. I'm Justin Gard. This has been Gopher Review Preview. Thanks to Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union. Going to be here every week for as long as football season goes on, and who knows, maybe even into basketball season as well. So thanks as always for checking us out, whether you watched us live or watched us a little bit later. And thanks to Affinity Plus for helping us out all year long. Learn about video banking, which has never been more important. Learn about mobile banking, which has never been more important than right now. And all of your other financial needs at affinityplus.org. Have a good one, everybody.
At Affinity Plus, our members come first.
Affinity Plus helped me a lot to pass through this tough time.
My family was negatively affected.
Affinity Plus showed that they are invested in our success.
You are the top priority.
And they did it proactively.
I have found them to be respectful, supportive, and compassionate.
I don't feel judged.
I feel when I go, I'm in safe hands.
And that is why I bank with
Affinity Plus.